Hola, buenos días, ¿cómo estás? Qué gusto saludarte. Feliz año 2026. Qué alegre, ¿verdad? Dios ha sido bueno con nosotros y nos ha regalado un nuevo tiempo. Así que tenemos un nuevo año para disfrutar. Y de verdad yo deseo que estés bien, tú y tu familia, y bienvenido a un nuevo episodio de Pensamiento en Soledad. Es algo muy especial estar aquí porque estoy con alguien que nos está acompañando y esta nueva temporada, esta es nuestra tercera temporada, vamos a tener invitados para interactuar, vamos a platicar, vamos a estar hablando a un nivel mayor de lo que es ansiedad y depresión, porque yo te he contado mi experiencia, pero ahora vamos a hablar con expertos en la materia para poder tener una mejor información. Así que hoy le doy la bienvenida a Megan Smith. Welcome, Megan.
Thank you.
Así que de verdad es algo tan especial. Ella es una licenciada en psicología y ella es de San Luis, Missouri, graduada también allá. Es algo muy bonito porque ya a nivel de alguien que ha estudiado el tema, podemos decir que estamos aprendiendo mucho más, ¿verdad? Yo siento que a mí me gusta mucho el preguntarle a expertos, preguntarle a alguien que lo está viviendo o a alguien que lo está estudiando, porque entonces me puede ampliar el panorama y eso a mí me ayuda. Así que yo quiero que tú puedas saludar. Can you say hi?
Yeah. Hi, everyone. I'm Megan Smith. Like she said, I'm from St. Louis. I am here in Guatemala for some time, so that's really exciting for me. And I'm so excited to be with you guys today because we're talking about a really big topic. We're talking about anxiety. And like she said, I'm in school right now in psychology. So I've been studying for several years on psychology. And I'll be doing therapy soon, hopefully. And, I just want to clarify. We're not doctors. We're not diagnosing anything. We're just talking about problems that we've experienced or people may experience that we know about, and maybe we can contribute some help to you. Maybe we can help you along the way or give you some tips or tricks for coping with anxiety and other things. So,
thank you. So, yo principalmente quisiera que tú pudieras explicarnos qué es la ansiedad, porque tú, como acabas de decir, lo has estudiado, lo has leído, y a nivel de todo lo que tú has aprendido, ¿qué nos podías decir que es la ansiedad?
Okay. So, anxiety is just something that commonly happens with a lot of people. And basically the way I like to explain it to people is it's an alarm system that goes off in your brain, right? And it's natural. It happens to everyone. And that's something that's talked about. Anxiety is talked a lot about in the psychology world because it's so common. Actually, I have a statistic here. Globally, around 359 million people experience an anxiety disorder, meaning that their anxiety is so intense that it impacts their daily life, that it impacts their functioning, that they can't do normal things because they have so much anxiety, right? In Latin America alone, research shows that about 1 in 7 people deal with anxiety disorders, right? And so it's more common than people like to think it is. And these statistics are just people that have been diagnosed, right? It's just the amount of people that have looked for help. So in reality, it's probably more people than that. So it's so important that we talk about this because it's so common. And even when people go through it, they don't exactly know what's happening, right? So an explanation, like I said, is it's like an alarm in your brain. It's natural. It happens to everyone in their lifetime. Mm-hmm. There's no person that never deals with anxiety at some point, right? And the reason we experience this alarm going off in our brain is because we are approaching a new situation that our brain doesn't know how to handle. Our brain is like, whoa, this is new. I don't know what I'm doing. I don't know how to handle this. I don't know what to say. I don't know anyone. And so it's natural that our brain is like, uh-oh, this is new. You may be in trouble. This may be dangerous for you, right? And so what's important is that anxiety happens for everyone, but intense anxiety, it can be a problem, right?
Mm-hmm.
Intense anxiety happens when your brain doesn't know when to turn off the alarm, right? So it's natural for it to happen in new situations, but sometimes we may be somewhere we've been a million times before, and all of a sudden our heart is like beating really fast, and we're like, why is this happening? I don't understand. And that's just your brain overworking. It's working too hard to protect you, right? And so anxiety can be a good thing. It's made to be a good thing. But it can be a problem because our brain constantly thinks we're unsafe. So the problem really isn't that anxiety happens. In fact, we should expect it in our lives, right? But the problem is that sometimes the alarm goes off when there's no real danger. You're not actually in trouble. You're not actually gonna get hurt. Like new mothers, I like to say a lot of time, I've seen this a lot, not that I am a mother, but I've seen this a lot in research too, that new mothers have so much anxiety because you've never had a baby before. You've never had to watch them take their first steps. You've never had to watch them eat peanut butter or something dangerous for the first time that they could be allergic to, certain fruits. And so you get so much anxiety because you're like, this is new, I'm so scared. But maybe like a lot of times baby's not in danger. There's nothing wrong. Baby's gonna be okay.
Yeah.
But our brain doesn't know that yet, right? So one thing I wanted to talk about was the difference between everyday anxiety and an anxiety disorder. Because in the psychology world, there is a difference. And that's something I've experienced in my own life too, is I don't like self-diagnosing or anything, and I don't like when anyone self-diagnoses and says, oh, I have this. You need to talk to a professional and actually see what the problem is and see if there's an issue. And that's so important because talking to someone, a professional, helps with putting a label to what you're dealing with, right? And I was talking to you about this the other day, that's so important, having a label, because there are so many treatment methods out there that only work for people that have that label, right? So if you are dealing with an anxiety disorder and not just everyday anxiety, there's medications that can help. There are doctors that can help. There are treatment methods that can help. And that's so important because if it can improve your everyday life, why not do it? You know, why not get the help you deserve to have? So the difference between an anxiety disorder and everyday, just normal day anxiety, maybe not every day. You shouldn't have anxiety every day. That's important. But the thing with a disorder is that your anxiety is so bad that it impacts your functioning, that you can't do everyday things that you would normally do.
Nos cambia la vida cuando estamos con ansiedad, ¿verdad? Como dices tú, cuando es demasiado. Y yo le decía a las personas que si es necesario buscar ayuda de un profesional como lo es Megan, como alguien que nos puede ayudar, eso es lo mejor que podemos hacer por nosotros mismos. Porque realmente a veces necesitamos medicina, como tú dices. Yo decía la vez pasada que aquí en Guatemala la ayuda psicológica y psiquiátrica es cara. Entonces yo les explicaba también que podemos buscar alternativas o podemos buscar, por ejemplo, sin importar la religión, siempre los líderes religiosos tienen estudios psicológicos para poder ayudar a las personas que asisten a sus iglesias. Así que es necesario, como tú dices, que busquemos ayuda.
Yeah, that is so important. And so one thing with anxiety is that a lot of people think that it just comes out of nowhere, right? But it doesn't. And that's kind of why psychology ties into anxiety so well, because psychology is the study of people's brains, right? We study people's minds, their actions. Why do they do what they do? And so really anxiety is such a big topic that it's looked at all the time. And there are so many different, like with a tree has roots where it comes from. There's so many different roots that anxiety could come from, stem from. So I like a lot of times anxiety could come from our parents, seeing our parents deal with anxiety, especially if it's extreme and intense. Going through our families, siblings, watching older siblings deal with it, or younger siblings, or anyone going through big changes, right? Our friends, our jobs. Sometimes jobs create a lot of anxiety, and that's so common. You get a new...
De la infancia también. Pues bien, ya, ¿verdad? Ya viene todo eso.
Exactly. There's so much anxiety that can come from different things. Big life changes, big decisions, where to live, who to marry, if you want to get married, when to have kids, just so many things. You think about life and it feels so big and expansive, but sometimes we remember, oh, it's really so short. It does not last forever. So we have all these big decisions to make and we don't know what to do, right? So so many things that it can come from.
Exacto. Yo siento que a veces es también conocernos. Yo hablaba la vez pasada de ese tema, conocerme, saber quién soy, como dice Megan, entenderme para saber pienso que para saber cuándo es una ansiedad como normal y cuándo ya se vuelve una enfermedad. Entonces, conocernos, ¿verdad? Para poder entender cuándo necesito ayuda.
Yeah. Health is so important. And knowing how to get help, right? Because when we're dealing with anxiety in the moment, sometimes it feels like I am the only person in the world that knows what this feels like, right? When I was younger, I dealt with a lot of panic attacks, and it got worse as I got older, and I've learned how to handle that and deal with that and what it came from. Mm-hmm. And that's so important because the only way to really fix a problem is know exactly what's going on. Know what is under the surface, right? I have an example that I was shared with, I was at a conference one time and a professor shared this example. And I thought it was so helpful. It was so helpful. And so the example was this. At one time there were two people. One of them brought a dog and they were at a park, right? And so this dog is barking at a tree out in the park somewhere, and they're talking. And one of the people goes, man, I wish that dog would shut up. I wish the dog would stop barking because I can't even hear you. I can't even focus. We're just talking and this dog won't stop barking, right? And so in this example, you can imagine the dog is your anxiety, right? And your anxiety is going off. You cannot talk to people. You cannot focus on real life, right? And it makes everything so hard. But what's funny is when the people got up to go see what was wrong with the dog, he was barking at a tree. And they were like, stop barking at the tree. The tree is not doing anything to you. There's nothing wrong with the tree, right? Just stop. But there was a hole in the tree, and in the hole was a little creature, right? There was something in the hole of the tree that the dog was barking at, and they didn't know it. So there's something in the tree, right? In our lives, there's something wrong that our brain is going off. And sometimes we have to go back and figure out what is the problem, what is causing this, what is triggering my anxiety. And like you said, that could be childhood, that could be family, that could be parents, and you may not realize it in the moment. Because in the moment you say, oh, I just want this to stop. I just don't want to feel this anymore. I don't want to be anxious. I don't want to be scared. I don't want to not be able to live my life because I feel this way. But we need to go back and see, what is the dog barking at, right? What is the real problem? What is it coming from? And how can I help with it? How can I fix this? How can I find out what is in the tree, right? And so, like I said, understanding it is the first step. And sometimes we can't do that on our own, right? Because in our own lives, we may not remember things, or we may say, oh, that wasn't important. That didn't matter. But if you talk to someone that can help you, like a psychologist, and they say, that was actually a big thing for you that you went through, and it connects to this and it makes sense why you're feeling so much anxiety, right?
Cuando yo estaba platicando acerca de esto, yo le explicaba a las personas que cuando yo no sé lo que está pasando en mi corazón, en mi vida, en la situación en que estoy como enojada, como triste, deprimida y realmente me siento muy mal porque no entiendo lo que estabas diciendo. Exacto. Entonces, yo personalmente he descubierto que cuando yo sé la raíz del problema, puedo amarme, puedo aceptarme y puedo seguir adelante. Es como tú dices, ese perro que ladra y ladra y nos está diciendo que algo está pasando. Entonces esta raíz yo tengo que ir a buscar qué está pasando para poder arreglar.
Yes.
¿Verdad? Como tú dices.
Exactly. So a few questions you can ask yourself is there, do I have a hard time being around my family? You know? Because that could mean there's something on there. Or do I have a hard time being around a certain person? Do I avoid people? Do I have a hard time with my mom, with my dad? Do I have a hard time with friends? Is there a friend that I don't know if I really like talking to you anymore? Is there something big, like something traumatic that happened in your past? Because really anxiety can come from any of those things. Did you get a new job, like we were talking about earlier, right? So all of these questions I was just saying could help you pinpoint. And sometimes you have to do some personal searching, right? Sometimes you have to go deep in your mind and just sit and think, why do I really feel this way, right? Sometimes in the moment our emotions are so strong that we don't want to go back to them. We don't want to go back and feel them again. We want to avoid it, right? We just want to, I want the dog to stop barking, right? But we don't want to go find out what's wrong. But that is so important that we find out what's wrong, right? When I was in school still, in my last year, my bachelor's, I was doing a study with a partner on what we call in psychology attachment. And it was a study conducted back in the 1960s or 70s. I don't quite remember the exact date. With attachment, it's a study done with mothers and babies, right? Mm-hmm. What they did is put the mom and the baby in a room and had some toys there, and they let the baby play with the toys and play with mom. And then the researcher, the psychologist who was doing the study, said, "Okay, mom, leave the room. Now you have to leave." And they would watch the baby's reaction, right? And of course, what do most babies do when their mom leaves the room? They cry and they cry. But what's interesting is some babies didn't cry. Some babies didn't even notice their mom was gone, right?
Really?
Some babies cried and cried and cried, and they couldn't stop crying until mom came back in the room, until it was time for her to come back. And some babies, like a lot of babies, you know, started crying and crying. But then they were like, calm themselves down. They were able to calm down and play with the toys again, right? And so what these psychologists did, and what I find so interesting, which is why I researched it, is they watched these babies as they grew up, right? And these babies kind of, as they grew up into toddlers and kids and adults, became different kinds of people, right? And so we call them attachment styles, right? Mm-hmm. How attached were they to mom? How attached were they to dad? To different people in their lives. And the different styles are secure, anxious, and avoidant. Those are the main ones, right? So the secure ones are the ones that they missed mom, but they were okay. They could play with the toys. They could calm themselves down, right? So they miss mom, but they're okay. They can handle problems like that, right? Because they were given a choice. You have toys. You can kind of make yourself feel better and handle the problem in front of you, or you can just be really upset about it, like babies do, right? And then avoidant babies are the ones that didn't even notice mom was gone. They didn't really care that she was in the room. They didn't really want to be with mom. They didn't want anything to do with her, right? And then anxious, which is what we're talking about, right? And what is so interesting with the anxious, the babies, they couldn't stop crying. They could not stop crying. And the reason why is because they couldn't handle the idea that mom was gone. They're so attached to mom. And a lot of psychologists think that this theory comes to play in our normal lives. If we, growing up, were so attached to our mom that we couldn't be with anyone else, that we didn't learn to handle problems, we didn't learn to face what's in front of us. We became so worried, we became so scared and anxious. And so a lot of psychologists think you cited childhood. That is such an important time of developing who you become. And so anxiety a lot of times can come from childhood. So if you think about what kind of childhood you had, were you kind of scared of your mom and dad, or were you too attached to them, you didn't like anyone else, or so that's important to think about is childhood, how you grew up, what kind of attachment you have to mom, and that's such an important thing. And the study we did had to do with attachment in college students, right? Because I was in college at the time, so it only made sense. So what we found out was that college students with secure attachment were more likely to go out and make friends, right? More likely to go out and be a part of a group, like go be part of a club, or go do things with their professors and with their friends, and then we found out that students who were anxious attached wanted to do those things, but they were so scared most of the time they didn't. Most of the time they stayed back in their dorm room and they avoided social events and avoided friends. And that makes sense, right? Because if you grew up only needing one person, it would make sense that you're so scared to be around other people. You're scared to take opportunities and get to know new people, right? Because your brain doesn't know how to process the new situations. And so you just avoid it altogether. I don't really want to, so that's important to talk about. And also another thing with childhood, there's a psychologist that I love. His name is Alfred Adler. And most of the psychology that he studied was family psychology and children, right? And he found a lot of times that birth order, the way you're born in your family, kind of determines how you act. And we see that a lot of times here in Guatemala too. A lot of in the villages, the older daughters, we were just in a village the other day, and the oldest daughters almost act like mom, right? They act like mom to their youngest siblings. They take on a lot of responsibility. They're very conscious. They have to think about everything. They're natural leaders, right? And sometimes they're very bossy. And as a firstborn daughter, I agree with all of this. You can ask my sister. Sometimes I'm very bossy. And so it's almost like they're so independent and they feel like they need to perform. And you can imagine that probably creates so much anxiety for some people, because they get out in life, even though they're not rather sibling anymore, they still have this identity that I need to be the leader. I need to take responsibility. I have to get things done myself. I have to do it. Other people rely on me, right? And that gets so heavy. And for me, a lot of anxiety came from that. So when I learned about this, I was like, wow, that makes so much sense, right? And the first step in anxiety to getting better is making sense of it, learning about it, learning what is wrong, and behind the scenes, kind of behind the curtain, like in a theater, behind the curtain, what is actually happening, right? We found, Alfred Adler found that the middle child were peacemakers. They were negotiators between their siblings. They're trying to make sure everybody's okay, no one's upset, right? Sometimes they can be a little manipulative, because since they're in the middle, they want to try to get their way, right? And they're trying to really figure out their role between all their other siblings, right? Because they're kind of in the middle, so they're like, what am I trying to figure it out, And you can imagine that causes anxiety too, because if you're trying to mediate between older and younger and they're always fighting, or if you are in a family that always fights and you're in the middle, I'm sure that causes so much anxiety too, And then we found out Alfred Adler, my favorite, is that the youngest were often spoiled, right? Because they're the baby of the family. And, you know, everyone, oldest sibling, middle sibling, everyone loves them, you know. Usually. Hopefully everyone loves it. Oftentimes they're pampered, spoiled, but usually they're highly ambitious. They're highly outgoing because they have something to prove, right? Their other siblings came before them and already made a life for themselves. And they're like, oh, now I have to be better than them, right? So you can imagine, I'm sure that causes anxiety too. See, right. So almost no matter where you're born in your family, depending on how you handle situations, and like I said earlier, attachment style, that kind of can change how you view life, how you see life, how you walk through different problems, right? So, depending on where you fit, you almost feel the need to live up to certain people and to fill the shoes and meet a certain expectation, right? To meet the standard and be better. And that's a lot of weight to put on your shoulders, you know? And I want to remind people that that's an idea you created for yourself, you know? Sometimes we're our worst enemy, right? See, sometimes we're our worst enemy. And the problem is we get in our head and we think, oh, I have to do this. I have to do this. Who said so? Right? Who told you that? And maybe there is someone in your life who told you had to be better, or you had to fix things or be independent and strong, especially males. Males are told they have to be strong. And we see a lot of times in Latin America, in Guatemala, that macho culture of
no llores, no llores, yeah.
Exactly. No. You can't cry, you have to be strong. And that's so sad, because then they're like, I can't feel these feelings. I'm not allowed to process this. Or like me as an older sibling, when I was younger, I was the oldest sister of 4. And a lot of times I told myself, I have to be strong for myself. I can't cry. I cannot deal with these emotions right now because they're struggling and I need to be there for that. Right? So then when it came to my turn to deal with the emotions, it was so much more than it needed to be, because I bottled it up and I pushed it away and no, not yet. And then when it came time, it was just like, so much emotion, right? A lot of times our own self-identity causes anxiety, the way we feel about ourselves. There's an idea a theory by Carl Rogers, which is another psychologist, right? And what he says is that anxiety is the tension between your imagined self and your real self. And what that means, this is also called the idea of congruence and incongruence. Those are kind of big terms, right? But what this means is we come up with an identity for ourselves in our mind, right? And in our mind, we say, okay, I have to be this. I have to be strong. I have to be brave. I have to get a career by a certain age. I have to be working. We set all these standards for ourselves. And then when in real life, we don't meet them, we're like, oh, I'm so anxious because I'm not meeting the goals I set for myself. And so that causes tension with yourself. You are your own problem, right? You're your own worst enemy, because you are telling yourself, I have to be better. And then when in real life, it doesn't work out that way. Sometimes it just doesn't. You know, we all know that life is hard and we all go through troubles and struggles. And when you get to that and you can't meet the standard you set, you just feel so heavy sometimes, right? And so that's an idea by another psychologist that I really like. And a way you can handle that is saying, I need to set realistic standards for myself. I need to accept that this may not happen. I need to accept that I may not get that job. I need to know that I may not be able to handle this problem and I may have to ask for help. I need to know that life changes in the blink of an eye, and one day something could be different. you know? And that's so hard sometimes to grasp because, you know, what if you just get in a car accident one day and everything is different?
Sí. Y yo oía algo que también decía, el 90% de las cosas que pensamos nunca pasa. Imagínense, yo lo decía a la estosa, el 90% de las cosas que yo estoy pensando, que yo estoy como, y si pasa esto, lo que tú dices, si pasa esto, si pasa el otro, ¿qué voy a hacer? Y todas esas cosas que a veces pienso y no pasan, eso solamente me provoca ansiedad.
Another thing we see oftentimes is a term in psychology we call comorbidity. And essentially what it means is if you struggle with one problem, you're more likely to have another problem, right? Mm-hmm. So a big one that is grouped together is anxiety and depression, right? Or stress. A lot of times, if we feel stress, automatically, our brain may want to grab onto anxiety. Mm-hmm. Or if we're feeling anxiety, our brain may automatically want to grab onto depression too. Mm-hmm. Or something else, right? Because they go together, right? Mm-hmm. So our position in life can also impact anxiety, right? We've talked a lot about work, about school, about being mothers and fathers. But there's a theory, and I think this one's probably my favorite of all of them. I say they're all my favorite, but this one really is. And this one is by Abraham Maslow, and it's called Maslow's Hierarchy of Needs. So I want you to imagine a pyramid, right? Like this. And so what he says is that in life, we are driven by an order of needs, things that we need in life. And that's what pushes us forward. So when we don't have something that we need, we get stuck, right? So if you imagine a pyramid like this, at the very bottom, the most basic things that you need are food, water, you need air to breathe, mm-hmm. right? You need just the basic things. You need food, you need shelter, somewhere to stay, you need so clothes on your back, you need good sleep. People really undermine the importance of good sleep. So get some rest tonight, please, because it is so important.
Dormir bien.
Yes. Actually, there's been studies done that the more sleep you lose every night, the more kind of delusional you get.
Sí, hay personas que dicen que duermen 5 horas uh-huh. y para ellos es suficiente. Uh-huh. Yo he oído gente que dice, yo duermo 5 horas y yo ya estoy con las baterías recargadas, pero eso no es cierto. Hay que dormir por lo menos 7 u 8, ¿verdad? Sí. 8 sí es lo excelente, pero por lo menos 7. Entonces hay que buscar también eso. Es la higiene del sueño, he oído yo, tan bonito, también lo he tratado de estudiar, el poder dormir bien. Uh-huh. Eso nos recarga, nos ayuda, nos restaura en la noche, así que hay que dormir bien, como dice Mea, a dormir bien.
Yes. Yeah, and there have been studies done that say that when you lose sleep, you actually lose brain cells. So you have only so many of those. Please get some sleep. But that's like a basic need, the most basic need. So if you are not meeting those needs, like it's so sad, children that don't get enough food. They cannot focus on anything else in their life because they don't have the most basic need. They're not getting the food they need. Mm-hmm. They're not getting maybe the clean water that they need to hydrate their bodies. Mm-hmm. And that is so essential. So when you don't have that, that's the times where you get stuck. And that's what you focus on, right? Mm-hmm. Next in the pyramid are safety needs. You need to be safe, right? Because if you're not safe, anything can happen. Your food can be taken from you. You can lose water. So things like personal security, having you safe, your own personal items safe, feeling safe, financial security, mm-hmm. feeling safe with having the money you need to buy groceries this week, mm-hmm. to pay for your car, to pay for your house. All those things are a part of the pyramid, right? Mm-hmm. Physical health, if you're not physically healthy, there's not much else you're focused on, right?
Access.
Being protected from harm, right? That's a big thing. People who live in dangerous communities probably are losing sleep because they feel not safe. And they probably can't focus on their job because at home they don't feel safe, right? And the tension that comes in the pyramid from being stuck in one spot or another, that can cause so much anxiety. Feeling like, I'm not safe at home. My kids aren't safe. I don't know what to do. That causes anxiety, right? Next in the pyramid is love and belonging, feeling the idea of I fit in somewhere, right? Social needs, needing friends, needing intimacy, a partner, a family, sense of connection with people in a community. That is so important because I say a lot of times that us as humans are made for connection. And you see that with God, right? We are made to be connected to people, right? And the Bible tells us a lot of times, like, where a group of two or more are gathered, they are stronger than a 3-cord strand, right? We're made to be connected with other people. We need friendship. We need love. We need a mom to take care of us. All these things. And so when you are stuck not having that, that's something else that you can dwell on and think about a lot. Next in the pyramid is self-esteem. All right. This is one I see a lot of people get stuck because they're like, I have a home, I have food, I have water, I have a partner, I feel safe, everything is great. I'm not confident though. I am not confident in myself, in my job. I feel like I suck. I can't take care of anything. Not having respect from other people, not having a sense of achievement, right? I feel like I haven't accomplished anything. And that's important. Feeling confident in yourself and feeling like I've done something. That's important. And so when you don't have that, you can get stuck. And the last one in the pyramid, which is really hard to get to, you can imagine, is self-actualization. And it's the last one. And the reason it's called self-actualization is it's because we've gotten to a point where we realize I'm good. I'm good where I am. I can improve. I am improving. I'm getting better every day. I'm learning languages. I'm meeting new people. I'm connecting with others, right? There's always a desire to be better, but you're also content and you're satisfied, right? And feeling fulfilled in life. And that is so hard to get to. And so that's almost like the goal, but it's not so easily attained. It's not so easy to get to, right? There are other psychologists that have a similar idea, similar theories of phases in life. And so Sigmund Freud, who is well known in the psychology community for his odd ideas, but he built a base for psychology that it was able to expand. So he's really important. And then Erik Erikson, who also learned from Sigmund Freud, had theories about going through stages of life at different ages, right? So an example of Erik Erikson's stages is in infancy, when we're babies, we come to the idea of trust versus mistrust. Do I want to trust this person? And you kind of see it on a baby's face when their mom's like, do you want to hold her? They look at you and they're like, do I trust this random stranger or do I not trust them? And some babies do. They're like, oh yeah, okay. And then other babies, they're like, no, don't touch me, you know? But a lot of times in our life, when we come to the idea of not trusting someone, it's like we're going back to that spot, right? And then another one is in adolescence. This is a big one that a lot of people struggle with, is the idea of having an identity or role confusion, which is what he calls it. But better terms would be just being confused, right? In life, I'm confused about who I am. I don't know who I am. A lot of times today we see the idea of, I don't know if I'm a boy or a girl. I don't know how I feel. Everyone tells me I should feel this way. And I don't understand what to do in this culture, especially if I believe in the Bible, right? Well, society says this, but the Bible says this, so I don't know, what do I do? And so it's like we're back at our teenage self, trying to figure out who we are, right? And so the tension of reverting back to that moment and trying to figure out, well, I don't know. And adolescence is usually the time where people figure that out, which is why it's in that stage. So infancy, you find out how to trust, or you learn not to trust. In adolescence, you learn who you are, or you remain confused until you do figure out who you are, right? And that's kind of the hard part, is if you are not in a good, nurturing environment at that time, it is most likely you're not going to figure that out. So if you were a teenager and you were in a bad situation, like with Maslow's hierarchy of needs, if you didn't have a good home, if you didn't have food, if you didn't have water, you're not worried about figuring out who you are, right? We're just worried about the bare minimum. So the rest of your life, you may most likely be struggling with that, right? And that's so hard to think about, because if you're like, man, I always feel defeated, I always feel like I can't accomplish anything. Well, what was happening when you were a teenager, right? And that's what Eric Erickson would have asked you. He would have asked you, well, what was happening at this time of your life? And sometimes those are the hard questions we have to ask ourselves, right? To get to the base of the tree and find out what is in the tree, what is the actual problem. Another one that a lot of people struggle with is during young adulthood. We either find out how to have intimacy or close friendship with someone, or we learn to be alone, right? And so we see a lot of people in their lives that are, I don't want anyone, I'm just better by myself. Saying giant energy. And maybe it's because in young adulthood, they had to, right? They didn't have the friends that they needed. They didn't have the space to grow, right? And as the thing we're emphasizing today is the tension in our lives creates the anxiety, right? And so the tension, if any of these theories resonates with you and makes sense to you, and you're like, oh, actually, I do struggle with that, and maybe I did struggle at that time in my life, think about that, because maybe that is where your anxiety is coming from. Maybe that is the tension that you need to dig into and look at and figure out, how can I fix that? How can I maybe talk to a professional about that? Hey, maybe I went through something really traumatic at this time in my life, and I've just struggled ever since, right? How can I think about that and calm my brain down, turn off the alarm, right? I'm safe now. I'm okay. I'm not in that situation anymore. And so,
tener miedo, no tener miedo de hablar, ¿verdad? Es una de las cosas más importantes, siento yo, porque lo que tú dices, a veces hay gente que ya tiene tantos años y jamás han hablado de lo que sienten, nunca, a nadie. Entonces, lo que tú dices es tan importante, saber cuándo tengo que hablar y con quién, cómo, ¿verdad? Ese tema que tocaste está importantísimo, porque yo tengo que muchas veces que hablar, y cuando yo hablo y saco lo que yo tengo, eso me pasó a mí, ¿verdad? Había cosas que yo nunca había dicho, pero cuando yo las saqué, sentí como que yo pude respirar otra vez, porque ya no estaba escondido, lo saqué a la luz y pude sentirme libre cuando yo hablé de las cosas que hay que hablar.
Exactly like you said, learning to talk and handle it and what works best for you. Maybe it's talking to someone, maybe it's thinking about it or talking to a friend, or maybe it's talking to someone that hurt you and forgiving them, which is the hardest thing of all. Oh, that's so hard. I know it's hard, but the Bible asks us to, right? I mean, so that's important. Maybe it's forgiveness or asking for forgiveness for something in the past. And I'm not saying it's easy. If you are looking to deal with anxiety or learn what's at the base of yours, what's the exact problem, it's not an easy road. And we both know that. It's hard, and it's very hard. But it's worth doing. It's worth digging deep and asking the hard questions. It's so worth it. And it may take a few years. It's not going to be easy. You're not going to go to a professional and immediately be solved, right? It's not going to be a magical oh, I'm fixed, right?
Mm-hmm.
It doesn't work like that, unfortunately. And a lot of people think psychologists or therapists, what they do is they tell you how to fix your problems. That's not true. We just kind of show you how to walk through them. Right? And one of those things is learning how to cope when anxiety does come up, right? And so I have a few coping techniques for you, and hopefully if you are struggling, you find this really helpful. So with anxiety, the biggest thing is we don't feel like we're in control because it's something new and our brain is yelling at us that there's a problem. And so we feel like we don't have control, right? And so that's the problem. So learning to control yourself, your body, the things that just in your mind, that's what helps you, right? Mm-hmm. Because anxiety is saying, oh, it's time to freak out. We can't control anything. But you remind yourself, I can control me. I can control my thoughts. I can control my breathing. So focusing on things you can control. So like I said, you focusing on your body, things you can control with your body, your senses. So this technique is called grounding, or the 5, 4, 3, 2, 1 technique, right? Mm-hmm. Grounding is essentially feeling like, you know, as anxiety gets you like in your head, but like feeling like you're solid, you're firm, right? So you focus on first 5 things you can see. So I would close my eyes right now, for instance, and I would say, or well, not close my eyes, right? But the 5 things I can see. So I right now would say, I can see plants. I can see flowers. I can see this table. I can see this cup. I can see Anais right here. And then 4 things you can touch. I can touch my cup. It's really smooth. It's really soft. I can touch this table. It's got holes in it, so it feels kind of weird to the touch. I can touch this paper. It's also smooth. I can touch my my jacket. It's got a cool texture to it, right? I'm focusing on things I can do. Okay, 5 things I can see. 4 things I can touch, 3 things I can hear. So I close my eyes and I say, I hear birds chirping. I hear the sound of my voice. I can hear the wind blowing, right? I can control that. 2 things that I can smell. So I smell my tea right here. It smells delicious. It smells like lavender and honey. And I can smell the breeze. It smells like food. It's delicious. And then the last thing is one thing I can taste, and I'm going to go ahead and go with my tea again because it tastes wonderful, right? But those are all things I can control with my senses. So I'm focusing on just me, not my anxious thoughts. I'm not focusing on what's driving me crazy. I'm not focusing on my heart racing, right? All the symptoms that we get with anxiety. Don't focus on those, because the more you focus on them, the bigger they get, right? Mm-hmm. You focus on something you can handle. Another thing I said, focusing on your breathing, right? Mm-hmm. So this technique is called box breathing. So if you imagine a box, right? Each side has 4 seconds. And you're going to imagine your breath like a little die, right? So on the first side of the box, we'll start in this bottom quarter here. We're going to breathe in for 4 seconds. So if you want to do it with me, we're going to go. 1, 2, 3, 4. And then we're going to hold it for 4 seconds. 1, 2, 3, 4. And then we're going to let it out for 4 seconds. So, and then we're going to hold it again for 4 seconds. And you just keep doing that until you feel better, until you feel calm. You breathe in, you hold it. You breathe out, you hold it. Breathe in, hold it, and breathe out and hold it. And that just calms you down. Like I said, a lot of times, with me, at least, with my anxiety, my heart starts pounding and pounding, and I feel like I can't breathe. So you are reminding your body, I can breathe. I have access to air. I'm okay. I can breathe. I'm calm. You're reminding your body that you are in control. Not your thoughts, not the alarm going off in your brain. You are in control of yourself, right? Mm-hmm. And the last one, your thoughts, which is probably the hardest one, I think. And a lot of times it feels like, exactly, we cannot control our thoughts. They're everywhere. So this one is called thought checking. You are checking your thoughts. First off, is this thought 100% true? Because my professor always said, she always said that feelings are real, but they're not always true. I feel anxious right now. That's very real. You feel that. But that thought that you're thinking, that may not be true, right? You may feel anxious, but it may not be true. It may not be 100% accurate. So is this thought true? Am I being irrational? Am I setting a standard for myself that I can't meet right now? Is there another explanation? Why else am I thinking this? Is there another reason why? Like thinking about your childhood, all the things we've been talking about. Is there a different reason I'm feeling this? It's not actually what's happening right now. Is there something else? Another thing, my favorite, is if I feel anxiety, I'm going to imagine that you're feeling the same thing. What would I tell you? What would I tell my friends? So if I am experiencing this, what would I say to a friend who's going through the same thing? So, Anais, I would tell you, you're okay. You're okay. You are here. You are in control with your body, of your breathing. You can be in control of your thoughts. Everything is okay. I promise you're not in danger. You are safe. You're with me. Everything is okay. Right? So I would tell myself the same thing. I'm okay. I'm not in danger. I'm safe. I can breathe, right? I'm calm. So like I said, with this whole thing, learning all these techniques are great. Learning to cope is great. Like I said, with the dog and the treat, if you don't go to the base of it, you will always be stuck struggling somewhere, right? If you don't go to the base of the problem and figure out what is actually wrong, what's wrong, because your brain is telling you something is wrong. So it's important that you love yourself and you have enough self-compassion to find out, why is your brain telling you something is wrong? And another thing, the last thing I want to say is that if you're listening and you really are struggling with anxiety and it's been a problem for you, I hope this helps. I hope all these things that we have said make you feel seen, make you feel heard, because there are people here who had experienced similar things. You've been through similar things, and you understand it's hard. You're not alone. You are not the only person dealing with this and feeling this way. And another thing, you're not broken. You're not broken. Your brain is just working overtime. And please, if you are truly struggling, seek help. Like Anais has said, find someone to talk to, even if it's just a good friend. Just talking to someone, okay? Message Anais, message us. We'll be your friend, okay? So, thank you so much for listening. And I really hope this helps you, because anxiety is much bigger of a problem than a lot of people realize. So, yeah, I really hope this helps.
Sí, muchas gracias, Megan, muchas gracias. Y gracias a ti por estar acompañándonos. Ha sido muy especial. Realmente nos hace falta tiempo porque este tema es muy largo y vamos a hacer más videos. Te prometo que vamos a seguir aquí trabajando para ti. De verdad, muchas gracias por tu tiempo, por tu cariño. Mándanos mensajes. Yo siempre te digo, si necesitas oración, aquí estamos para orar por ti, para acompañarte. Y gracias por acompañarnos. Así que nos vemos pronto en un nuevo episodio de Pensamiento en Soledad. Y gracias a nuestra invitada especial. Y nos vemos pronto, primero Dios. Cuídate mucho. Hasta la próxima.